Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another day, of course, at 2020 Previews. We're going to recap and analyze all the cards that were previewed over the last 24 hours. If you're curious as to the sources, in other words, which content creators previewed each card, just check out the description below. All the information's down there. And also, if you're looking to pick up a booster box of Course Set 2020, they do have them at FlipsideGaming.com, and you can use that Heroes promo code. Hopefully save yourself a little cash while you support us. Always appreciated, but with that being said, let's get into it. Yesterday, we saw the promo version of these 5 cards. Today, we saw the regular card frame, so I just thought I'd show them to you real quick. But if you want to hear my thoughts on them, check out yesterday's video. Shiny Simplified Language preview here with Bishop of the Exalted. This is a weird one. Notice 2 on color. We were talking about that yesterday. There's a lot of cards here that kind of want you to get a little more devoted. This is one of them. Now, this is a really weird card. It could do some cool things and could maybe even combo in Standard or Modern. Just don't know how consistent these combos are. One way to go is to use Divine Visitation and any sack outlet. And in Modern, you even have Altar of Dementia, so you could potentially do that and kind of go off. But again, consistency could be an issue there. You also have Arcane Adaptation in Standard, and Kaikar, which we saw yesterday, that would actually work with this card too. Again, consistency is probably going to be an issue for you though. Maybe you just try this in an Angel build and let it do its job without tricks. This might just be a better card to use in Commander. I think you could pull these things off in Commander and it could be kind of fun. In Limited, you probably don't want to play this most of the time unless you have some Angels to back it up. We'll have to see what the rest of the set looks like. Or maybe you do main deck it if you're trying to gum up the ground right off the bat because you have a longer game plan. So there are some reasons to use this other than, hey, I just want to use the ability for the Angels. Or if you don't main deck it, just pull it in if you come up against an aggressive build. Hanged Executioner. Let's talk Limited first. I know it's a rare, you're not going to see it all the time, but wow, if you can get this and draft or sealed play it will be great for you. Very splashable. You don't have to be in the Jeskai Flyers plan for this to be a good card. It's probably better there, sure. But just generally, a 3 casting cost 1/1 flyer that also gives you a second 1/1 flyer. Those are pretty good stats. And then, oh, by the way, you can later sacrifice this, pay a white and 3, exile a target creature. Yeah, this is going to be super sweet there. Now, it is a spirit, so could it see Modern play? It's not a bad card, but I'll be honest with you, I can't think of what I'd want to take out of the spirit deck to replace this with. I don't know, maybe it's worth testing, though. Standard, I do think this does see play, especially once we get to rotation time. Mono-white aggressive decks will be interested in this. Loyal Pegasus. This one is a reprint originally from Born of the Gods, also in Battle Bond. This is a fine limited card. You'll be happy to play it there. Standard, I do think this also could see play in the mono-white aggro deck, either now or post-rotation. This could be a replacement for Sky Marcher Aspirant. Pacifism. You know it, you love it. It's got some new art, though. This has been in a lot of Magic sets. It is here at Common, which is great for limited purposes for white. This is solid white removal at just 2 mana. Doesn't take care of all your problems. It doesn't shut off the creature's abilities. But it does make it so they can't attack or block as long as they're enchanted with this. Always a fantastic limited card. What about Standard? Typically, I would say no, Pacifism isn't really a Standard card. But with the mass tokens running around out there, I gotta kind of wonder if it doesn't show up in some sideboards next season. Another reprint here with Rule of Law. This is actually not a bad one financially. This was from Mirrodin, also in 10th edition. Those copies will run you $3 to $4. The foils, though, will run you around $14. So this is another opportunity to grab a foil. And that's because this is a pretty good Commander card. A lot of Commander players will be happy to see this reprinted. Standard, maybe in a control build, or maybe out of the sideboard against the Phoenix deck. Those are a couple options to look at. It is an odd card in Limited, though. There might be some situations where it's going to be helpful to you, but most of the time it will stay in your sideboard. Starfield Mystic. Okay, this is an interesting card because in Standard right now, there's not a lot of cards that will synergize with this. This is most likely a throw forward card, and we're going to see some enchantment strategies maybe sometime later in the year. There are a lot of clues in the set that maybe we will go back to Theros because we have seen a little bit of an enchantment focus. We've seen some monocolor devotion focus. Time will tell. There's also a little bit of a wedge focus in the set, though, so who knows? Now, with that being said, hopefully we'll find something to do with this in Standard later, but probably not right now. Commander, Oathbreaker, if you play an enchantment deck, this will be perfect there. Limited, this is a rare card that you're not going to see all the time, but if it shows up and you can draft some enchantments around it, it gets that much more powerful. Worst case scenario, you could still use it as a curve filler, 2/2 for 2. You're always looking for those. Even if you only had 1 or 2 enchantments in your deck, You just get a little bonus here or there. Definitely worth your time. Captivating Gyre. This is fine for limited. It's a sorcery speed 6 casting cost spell, so I'm not really feeling it for standard. But if I do play this in Draft or Sealed, bouncing 3 creatures. Now, they could be my own creatures, and there might be some reason to do that. Maybe you have some good enters the battlefield effects or something like that. But most of the time, you're just going to bounce 3 of your opponent's creatures. And in Draft or Sealed, that could be very good, sometimes even game-winning. Convolute. Saw this in Ravnica, City of Guilds, Eldritch Moon. Limited if you're playing a little bit of a control strategy. Yeah, you'll be happy to run one of these. Nothing crazy, though. Dungeon Geist. Good reprint here for limited. Like, this card can be backbreaking. 4 casting cost 3/3 flyer that's going to tap down one of your opponent's creatures as long as this can be on the battlefield. So if you tap down another flyer, you just keep getting in there for damage many times. This will be great for you in Draft or Sealed. It doesn't matter if you're in the Jeskai Flyers theme or not. This is just a good card. Also, when I see a card like this, I start to think that maybe Standard Spirits could be a thing. Flood of Tears. This is a rare, but it's kind of interesting. 6 casting cost, a lot of mana here, but you're getting a lot out of it. So a lot of people automatically go right to Emrakul. Think about Modern, you play a bunch of eggs, right? Some real cheap spells. Play this, throw Emrakul down, call it a day, right? Are there more efficient ways to get Emrakul in play in Modern? Probably. But people are definitely going to try this out, as they should. Maybe Omniscience would be worth trying too. Standard, maybe. You won't have Emrakul there, but maybe you can grab some other really big creature that's hard to cast. Do a similar thing. Or you could simply put this in like Simic Ramp. Ramp out. If you fall behind for some reason, pick everything up. You get to throw something down, hopefully, and then ramp back out again and try to erase your opponent. Could be an option, maybe a sideboard option against certain matchups. Definitely another card worth testing. I do think you're going to have the most fun with this, though, in Commander. You're going to be able to do crazy things with cards like this there. And in Limited, I think it's good there. It's a rare. I mean, it should be good, but it could be a panic button if you start to fall behind. Just pick everything up. Most of the time, you are going to have 4 non-land, non-token permanents, so you'll be able to kind of get ahead of your opponent a little bit with this, which is real nice for 6 mana. And then maybe if you have some cheap spells, especially Izzet Colors or something like that, you could start to pull ahead. Great catch-up card. Leyline of Anticipation. Yep, I kind of thought it would be there after we saw some of the other Leylines yesterday. And it is. It's a reprint, of course, from Magic 2011. That one will cost you $20, so financially this does add a lot of value to the set. Foils from Magic 2011 are about $42, $43, so those are pretty expensive too. This got some new art as well. Now, in Standard, Teferi Time Raveler exists, so I don't think this card's going to do anything too amazing there. This has always been a great Commander card, and that's what it's going to continue to be. Limited, this is actually a really good Draft or Sealed Leyline. A lot of them are kind of lackluster. But in this case, if you can get this out at the beginning of the game, your opponent has to think for the rest of the game, what do they have in their hands? If you have open mana, they have to be wary when it comes to attacks. It could really mess up their tempo. Here's a Chinese simplified language preview, and it's a good one. Mythic Planeswalker here. Mu Yanling, Sky Dancer. So let me start off by saying this. Typically, I don't like to evaluate a Planeswalker by their ultimate, but this is a good ultimate that I really want to try to make happen. You get an emblem with islands you control, have tap, draw a card. That's kind of sweet, right? So how do you get there with this card? Well, you only start off with 2 loyalty. It does tick up by 2, though. It does have a +2. The +2 does defend it. Until your next turn, up to 1 target creature gets -2/-0 and loses flying, so that's good. -3 also can defend it. Create a 4/4 blue elemental bird creature token with flying. They really are pushing this elemental and bird theme in the set too, which is kind of sweet. So, does this see Standard play at the end of the day? Yeah, I actually think it does. The only drawback right now for me is just simply, where do I play this card? There's so many really good Planeswalkers right now. I don't know where this fits in off the top of my head, but I do think someone's going to figure it out. Mostly just because the casting cost is so cheap. You get a really solid Planeswalker here on turn 3, potentially. In a control build, defend it a little bit. The +2, like I said, can defend it as well. Even if you just plan on making a 4/4 flyer or 2 and just winning that way, that's good enough. If you happen to ultimate, well, I guess even better, I suppose. So this might shock you, but blue has been a very good color in Commander, so this could fit into a number of builds there. You could use this in Oathbreaker if you chose to as well. Goes without saying, it's a limited bomb, as it should be. A Mythic Planeswalker, it better be a bomb, and this definitely will be awesome for you. Just the +2 and -3 will be more than enough for you in Draft or Sealed. Overall, really sweet Planeswalker card here. Blight Beetle. Okay, protection is back apparently. A lot of surprises in this core set. So with the protection from green, let's talk limited first. This is more of a sideboard card. If your opponent is trying to do anything with +1/+1 counters for some reason, don't know if there's a lot of cards like that in the set yet or not. Or if they're just playing green, then yeah, side it in and we'll be good for you. If not, probably just stays in the sideboard. Now, what about standards? Yeah, I think it sees sideboard play. It hoses Explore, Proliferate, Amass. One of those things is definitely going to be happening next standard season, right? So I do think you might actually see this show up there, believe it or not. This is also good in Commander for hose purposes. Bone Splinters. This is a great reprint for limited. This is a very powerful removal spell. And a lot of times sacrificing a creature doesn't always have to be a drawback. It just depends on what's going on in the set. But even so, for just 1 black mana, if you have to do it, you got to do it to destroy target creature. Always solid in Draft Your Sealed. When it comes to standard, Spark Harvest is out there, so if Aristocrats wanted something like this, they would just go and get Spark Harvest. Legion's End. This is a fantastic rare. Let's talk limited first and get that out of the way. 2 casting cost, sorcery speed, exile target creature and opponent controls with converted mana cost 2 or less. You had me right there. If you hit any extra copies, either on the battlefield, in the hand, or graveyard, wonderful. Maybe this will happen more often in Draft than Sealed, but even if you're only hitting the 1 creature, you're still getting to look at your opponent's hand, which is really economical for the cost here. Standard, though, this will always see standard play out of sideboards. There's always going to be threats out there that are going to come in multiples. That's just the nature of standard, especially small threats. They're important for the curve, so you know players are going to have them. Right now, off the top of my head, one of the best targets for this would be Hydroid Crisis, but there's others, and there's always going to be more as time goes on. This could also see Modern and maybe Legacy play too against, say, Death Shadow, for example. Could be good there coming out of the sideboard for those type of matchups. Maybe not great for Commander, sure, but I think this card will see a lot of play. This one is a Chinese simplified language preview, Demolishing Digger. Now, this is a goblin, and there's a few goblins we're going to look at today, so maybe there is a little bit of a goblin theme in here. But this is a goblin that I do think is too fragile for standard regardless. This is a strong limited card, though. I'm usually not a big fan of 3/2s for 3, but the ability has me sold here. Pay 3, tap, sack a land, or artifact, draw a card. Later in the game, especially in sealed games, it can go long sometimes. Being able to turn those extra lands into card draw and find the action you need, that could actually win you the game. So this is a very, very solid common. I do think Commander, Land Matters decks like Lord Windgrace, for example, could be interested in this too. Ember Hauler, another reprint here from Magic 2011, also was in dual decks Merfolk versus Goblins. It is another goblin, so make note of that. We'll have to see if that goes anywhere in this set. But it's also 2 on color, so again, that devotion theme is starting to creep in here. Generally, though, it's just a good card. At 2/2 for 2, you know I love that, even if it is 2 on color. And then you have the ability at some point to just pay 1, sacrifice this, and throw 2 damage at any target. Nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, I think that might be good enough to see standard play in a mono-red aggro deck, maybe post-rotation, but you can fling this at Planeswalkers, and that could matter. Another Chinese simplified language preview, Goblin Bird Gripper. Kind of curious to what that actually translates to in English. I guess we'll find out tomorrow. But this is a card for limited purposes. Another goblin here. You could play this maybe if there is a goblin synergy, or Jeskai Flyers might be interested in this too. If you don't have that many flyers, maybe it doesn't always make your cut, but it does have a role. Another Chinese simplified language preview here, Reckless Airstrike. Another card for limited. This is not a Braid. This is sorcery speed. The 3 damage can only be done to a creature with flying. Yeah, it is 1 cheaper, but I don't really think it gets there, honestly. I just think it's too slow and too situational. Limited, it will be good for you, though. I feel like, from what we've seen so far, and it's still early, that this might be main deckable just because you have 3 colors, Jeskai colors that care to some degree about flyers. You should run into at least a flyer over the course of a game, and if not, maybe an artifact. So as we see more of the set, you can make a better determination whether you want to start this in your sideboard or main deck at times. But I do, at least so far, think it could be main deckable. Repeated Reverberation. Okay, this card can do some crazy things if the setup's right. I should point out with this card, though, it's not an all of the above situation. It is an or, so you have to choose one of those 3 things. But that's okay. I mean, the card is still very, very good that way. Let's talk standard first. Take Rawstorm Conduit, use the minus ability. Take this card, play Skewer the Critics. Yeah, if you pull that off, you're having a pretty good day. The question is, how consistent can you make something like that in a standard deck? People are going to try because the power is here. If someone can figure it out, awesome. That could actually be something that happens next season. Or maybe you could just use this with Chandra Awakened Inferno and make some emblems. However, I do think this is a card that's going to shine probably more so in Commander or Oathbreaker. Oathbreaker, you could take Ral, you could take this, make it your signature spell if you wanted to. That could be kind of interesting, I suppose. Or just playing this in Commander. There's a lot of crazy things you could do. You have a lot of mana, you have a lot of time to work it out. So that might be where the card finds a home. Limited, yeah, you know what? If you have a reason to play this in your limited deck, go for it. You want to make sure you have some pretty good payoffs for this. If you do run it, if you don't feel like you have good payoffs in your pool, then of course skip it. Uncaged Fury. Now this is a Japanese language preview, but it is a reprint. You see a recent printing on the left side for translation purposes, the one from Masters 25. This was also in Shadows over Innistrad. Now this did get an upshift from common to uncommon, and I do think that's good for limited. This card could sometimes steal a game out of nowhere, especially if your opponent wasn't expecting it. Very good pickup, though, for limited decks, especially aggressive ones. Unchained Berserker. This one has protection again, this time protection from white. If I'm playing Draft or Sealed, this is very main deckable in an aggressive build. If I'm not in an aggressive build, I would just keep it in my sideboard, but if my opponent is playing white, then I would sideboard it in. This could see standard play, at least out of sideboards for like mono red decks for when you come up against the mostly white aggro matchup. Barkhide Troll, a little more devotion here. 2 green for a 2/2. Oh, wait a minute. It comes in with a counter, a 3/3. Nothing wrong with that. You know what I'm going to say. Fantastic limited card here. Draft or Sealed, you want to play with this. Cheats the curve a little bit by giving you a 3/3 for 2. And it has an ability that makes it persistent. Very nice. That ability can also become better if there's other ways to get +1/+1 counters on this. We'll have to look out for that as more cards get revealed. Now, the big question, could this see some play in Standard? Yeah, I think maybe with Proliferate out there, this could be pretty decent. Or even like in a Gruul mid-range deck with Rhythm of the Wild. Card could be good coming in with an additional counter on it. 4/4 for just 2 mana, and you have that ability with 2 counters to use right off the bat. Not bad at all. Growth Cycle. I like cards like this. It's a nice combat trick, and if you are in a draft especially and you have a few copies, it will scale nicely as the game goes on. Also, I do think this could see some Pauper play too, potentially. Loaming Shaman. This is a Japanese language preview, but it is a reprint. On your left side, you see the copy from Commander 2015. This was originally from Dissension. Notice it did get downshifted from rare to uncommon here. And those Dissension foils, I'll tell you, they run about $6, $7 because this card has seen a little modern play out of sideboards from time to time. With that being said, does it see standard play? I think it could. Remember, Scapeshift is still a thing. They're giving us more pieces, maybe one last shot at a Scapeshift deck. If it works out, this could be part of it for sure. Also out of sideboards, this is good against Command the Dreadhorde. And if Mill ever became a thing, don't know if it would, but I'm glad this exists in case it would, I suppose. So that's another thing you could consider. Now in Limited, I think it's a really good card too. A nice uncommon to pick up. Again, never a fan of 3/2s for 3, but the ability has me sold here. Being able to shuffle some of your best cards back into your library towards the end of a long game, especially a sealed game, that could be very nice. In some ways, it's almost going to feel like a light tutor. Take all my removal spells, for example, back to my deck when I only have about 10 cards left. That could be pretty awesome. So, yeah, this is a great pickup for draft or sealed. Overgrowth Elemental, and this is a card you'll be happy to play in draft or sealed, especially if you are going down that Teamer Elemental path we talked about yesterday. Fits perfectly in there, but overall it's a pretty solid card. Even if you have no other elementals, granted a 3/2 for 3 is not very exciting, but as time goes on, you're going to lose creatures. Those little 1 points of life will add up over time, especially again in a long game, and if that's the case, this was worth your 3 mana. Obviously, it's a lot better if you have elementals around it. What about standard? Well, I said yesterday, maybe an elemental deck could get there. I don't know if it's just going to be one set worth of push, though. It might take some future elementals to get it there, but you never know. The Chandras look pretty good, and they do work well with elementals, especially in this case, the rare one. Chandra Acolyte of Flame could be very good with this card in particular. And finally, Commander Oathbreaker. Yeah, you have a better shot of doing something with elementals there, most likely, and this card would definitely fit in. Pulsa Marasa. This is a really cool reprint. This actually got shifted from a common to an uncommon. I remember playing this in Oath of the Gatewatch and Battle Bonds as well as Ultimate Masters, and this card was always crazy good. Like 6 life for 3 mana at instant speed. Return target creature or land from graveyard to owner's hand. That could be your graveyard to your hand, or you could get something out of your opponent's graveyard if they're trying to like reanimate it or something. You can do that at instant speed. Kind of amazing sometimes, right? So outside of limited, we know it's going to be great there. You're going to find something to do with it. Standard, could it see play? Well, it does see modern play. This has been a huge pauper card over the years too, by the way. So I do think it could see standard play. Maybe you could just put it in the sideboard against Phoenix decks. It's just more of a tempo play there, but you're also gaining 6 life. So you disrupt their Phoenix synergy for a turn anyway, and you also gain a bunch of life. Basically, 2 Phoenix hits. Doesn't feel like the worst thing in the world you could be doing. The other thing I'd like to try here is maybe play this with Bolas's Citadel. The life gain could let you go deeper through your deck. I do think this card has a lot of potential. Ravenous Hydra, this is a Japanese language preview card. Limited rare that's going to be real solid for you. Just a little bit of mana makes a sizable creature in sealed or draft, and the longer the game goes, the more mana you will have at your disposal. The fight mechanic's great. Doubling the power toughness on the trample creature could be very, very good too. Maybe even game ending at times. Standard, this feels like a little bit of a resource drain to me. You put a lot into it and then it just gets blown up. Maybe test it in a ramp deck like Bant Ramp, but I don't know if I'm sold on it there. The place I really want to play it though is in Commander in like a Hydra or Counters deck. Imagine playing this with like Unbound Flourishing or Doubling Season. Definitely would be fun. Season of Growth. This is a cheap enchantment. I like that, and it actually does a lot. Let's talk about limited first. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. I don't even have to read that second part of the card. I'm already sold on this. And every once in a while, maybe I'll have an opportunity to play some sort of spell on one of my creatures, and I'll draw a card. If that happens, though, it's just gravy on top for me at that point. Now, what about Modern? Now, this is a long shot, but I at least want to test this maybe in Hexproof. Just because more so the second ability there. You're going to be targeting your creatures with aura spells and such. And I don't know, maybe you can get a little bit of a push through your deck with this. I'm not completely sold on that because you don't want to water down that Hexproof strategy and slow it down in any way. But it's worth testing, just kind of see how it plays, I suppose. Standard has me more interested though because of Feather. So you would have to bring green into that deck and go nigh a Feather. But if you did, maybe it is worth it. This will play very well in that strategy, I think. That does feel like it has a little potential. Finally, Commander. Yeah, there's some decks that would appreciate this too. Wolf Rider Saddle. This is a pretty good limited card. I like this because here's my thought. Forecasting cost, you're thinking kind of Hill Giant is on par, but this goes beyond that. You're getting a virtual 3/3 creature here, and you're also getting the ability on the creature that it can't be blocked by more than one creature. And secondly, you can go ahead later and move this so you get the flexibility as well. Yeah, sure, for 4 mana, that actually feels real good. The other place where it could be interesting is maybe some kind of wolf tribal decks when you're talking casual Magic. You could play this in Commander, you could play this in Oathbreaker with Arlen, for example. Maybe this isn't a standard card necessarily, but it definitely has some homes. Here's a Mythic for you. It's another one of the wedge cards, Kalia, Zenith Seeker. Maybe not quite as good as the original, but it's still pretty good. 3 casting costs, 3/3 flying vigilance. I don't have to read anymore, and I'm pretty interested in this for limited anyway. Now, it is Mardu colors, so you have to make sure your deck's going to be able to swing that. But if it can, play it, even if you don't have a whole lot of other angels, demons, or dragons. If you happen to have a couple, wonderful, maybe you'll get lucky, but if not, it's still a very substantial flyer. Standard, maybe Mardu Angels, at least try it out there, see how it plays. Commander is where this is going to really shine, though, of course, because you could make this your Commander. A lot of cool things you could do with this card there. Golos Tireless Pilgrim. It's a legendary creature. It's colorless, but it has 5 color identity. You know what that means. Time to play some more Commander. We've been getting a lot of these recently, and I think that's cool. A lot of players have been asking for them. This one could be fun with some powerful lands like Dark Depths or something like that. Also, if you can go infinite on mana, and you do need the multiple colors, though, of course, you would be able to cast your whole deck. Granted, Urza can probably do that a little bit easier than this card, but either way, it's still something that could happen. Outside of Commander, I don't really see this lighting up Standard or anything like that. Honestly, this is a rare that I might not always play in Limited. Like, it does some things for you, like if I have a good non-basic land that I really care about, maybe I'll play this as a way to search it up. Or maybe I'm actually able to swing the 5 different color mana in the ability cost. Don't know how easy that's going to be yet until we see the rest of the set, but if you could pull it off, then wonderful. A lot of times, though, this is a rare that might actually not see play. Here's an Italian language preview card, Punishing Rod, and you know something? I remember the days where Rod of Ruin was actually a good limited card. Like, I would just main deck that without thinking, and it did work all the time. Times have changed. There's not a lot of 1 toughness creatures out there anymore. Everything seems to be a 2/2 for 2, go figure. This could have a role maybe in limited. I do think if you have a good way to get rid of this consistently, the 5 damage to any target could be really, really good. Now, pinging something for 3 mana every turn doesn't feel amazing, but in a long, drawn-out game, it could actually matter. Maybe I don't always main deck this if I don't have a consistent way to get rid of it, but I could side it in if my first game went very long. Also, some builds just like to gum up the ground, gum up the game. Their plan is to go long. If that's the case, maybe you just go ahead and run this there. Standard, I'm not really feeling it there. Unless there's like a reprint of Shrapnel Blast or something, then maybe this is standard playable, but I don't think that will happen most likely. Field of the Dead. Okay, this is a crazy rare. Not necessarily a good rare, but a crazy rare. It does come into play tap, so it's slow. Taps for colorless mana, so it's not going to be great if you're going into multiple colors, which the actual ability here would be better if you're in multiple colors, but I digress. Whenever this or another land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands with different names, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. By the time you actually make that happen, I don't think the 2/2 zombie creature token is going to be all that good for you anymore. And let's face it, limited, if this is your rare, unless there's a whole bunch of non-basic commons with different names or something, this is not going to feel good to you. Now, sure, you could play this 5 different basic lands if you were in like a 5-color deck, and then just 1 other non-basic and you're there. But wow, that's jumping through some hoops, and obviously that is going to be very difficult of a strategy to make consistent. So I'm not feeling it at all for Drafter Sealed, unfortunately. Standard? I don't know, you got Scape Shift, you got Guild Gates and such. A lot of multicolored decks obviously in Standard right now. But again, this is going to slow down the multicolored decks if it's part of your mana base, and that's awkward. And then, like I said, by the time this ability actually is functional, it just might not be good enough anymore at that point. Commander, though, that's a different story. I do think there are Commander decks where this is actually good. Lands decks, zombie decks, there's a lot of different builds where this will not only trigger easily, but the 2/2 zombie tokens might actually matter. Alright, well those are today's preview cards. We're going to come back tomorrow and do the same thing all over again. Look at all the cards that come out over the next 24 hours. But until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.